Okay, welcome back. We are going to look at doing plastic and shadows. So this is where we're going to get to. So we're going to learn how to create a plastic shiny finish effect and also how to deal with the shadow that is cast from the cube. Okay, so where to begin? You're going to need minimum 2 pencils. So one color and then a black or a soft regular pencil. You may optionally need a second, it's up to you, a second color in the same color range. So if you've got a light blue, go for a dark blue. If you've got a light green, go for a dark green, and so on. Now, where to begin? So I move my pencils out of the way. I'm going to choose where the light is coming from. We looked a little bit at this in the last lesson, but we didn't deal with the shadow. So I'm going to imagine I've got a soft light source coming pretty much from this direction. So the sun's up here. There'll be a little bit of what we call ambient light, but let's not concern ourselves too much with that. We're just going to learn a little bit about how a shadow is cast. So if the light is coming from this way, you know, I can imagine that probably from this corner here, I'm going to have a bit of light just cutting the edge of that corner, and then the shadow will be cast from my block here, also through here, but I can't see that. And then from this edge here, I'm going to have a light cast. It's going to always look longer than the shape unless the light source is directly above or very close. So if it's sunlight, it's going to be longer than the object. You'll notice this when you're outside and you look at your own shadow. Okay, so now I'm going to try and draw a little bit of the cuboid. I'm not going to worry too much about this being exact. There are many tutorials on how to do this very exact, but we're just looking at freehand shadow sketching. So I'm quite happy with that. I might actually go a little bit sharper there. I think that will look a little bit more accurate. There we go. Beauty of having a rubber and light sketching. There we go. So I'm pretty happy with that. Now, dealing just with the shadow first, then we'll do the plastic finish. I'm going to actually take a pencil here. So the furthest away from your cube, the shadow is going to be the lightest. So I'm going to take my pencil about halfway or a third up and trying to use sketch strokes that are all in the same direction. You may find it easier to move your booklet or your book, your paper, whatever you're working on. And I'm going to create a nice even shadow. And then I'm actually going to put a little bit more pressure on, and I'm creating a gradient. So if you've looked at tonal values or gradient tables, you will understand that you need to get darker with a darker gradient. So more pressure, and all the way keeping that quite pressurized up to here, but I've lost my pressure. I'm going to go back over it. The edge nearest the cube is going to be the darkest. So right underneath the cube, that's your darkest point. And then from here, it's going to come out back up through the gradient scale. So you've got to work and blend in your pressure. Realistically, it would probably be a similar shape to the shadow as well. So it probably needs to come out about there. It can be soft, it can be sharp, however you want to deal with it. And then down into this section. A little bit that way, there we go. I'm going to change my pencil direction. It's a bit hard to do that edge that way. And then I'm going to keep blending up here. Shadow, shadow, shadow. There we go. Just neaten that edge up, a few little strokes, light, nice and fluffy. There we go. So we can then take our eraser and just crisp our edges up. Nobody ever knew that we went out of those lines. Nice and neat. If you used like a pencil, or if you've got quite soft colouring pencils, you might be able to smudge with your finger and just blend that in. But remember, you get a really black, icky finger. So either use the eraser or go wash your finger afterwards because you don't want to spread it all across your page. I'm just going to take that little cut of shading out of there. There we go. Let's now move on to our plastic. So this one is plastic texture. Now, we know our light is coming from the other side. Also note, like, you quite often get mucky side hand from these things. You might want to just neaten your page, or just be careful you don't spread it and make it all icky across the page. So now we want to create the same level of darkness on this side, which is the furthest side away from our light. So I'm going to say, let's just fill this in pen. So soft light is coming from this direction, okay? So looking at our previous one for metal, we knew that the light, when it came from, in this diagram, the left, the right-hand side was the darkest. So here it's coming from the right-hand side, so the left-hand side, the opposite side is going to be darkest. So this side is darkest. Now, which is lightest? The top. So the top is the face that's going to catch the light first. So the top is brightest. Now this one, similar to here, we're going to have our half tone. So it's half bright. Okay, now how to do this. So let's grab our pencils out. So I'm working in blue. I'm just going to use this light one to start off with. Now I know that this side is the darkest. So again, about a third of the way up the pencil from the end, I'm going to apply an even, relatively even color to the darkest face. This is the densest saturation of color. Now this one here, similar to what we said, we're going to have like a half tone. So I'm going to shade up to it, but I don't want to fill it in completely, because remember we're doing plastic texture. I take my pressure off, similar to the metal. It's really similar actually, but a little bit crisper. And then I find that, you know, blue is quite a good color to work with for plastic, and it also looks a little bit like glass too. Now our top surface, this one, you can take the lines whichever way you want. Which way? I'm going to go like this. So I really don't need too much on here. So just a few little showings that this is blue, and then I've got my top surface done. Okay, now to finalize, I'm going to take my darkest blue, just crisp those edges off. I'm going to put a little bit more tone in there. You see how this is then really popping out of the page. I might even put a little bit of curvature on, starting to look a bit like an ice cube even. And keep my half tones going up there, so I don't want more color up here. Let's go up here, just rounding those edges off. It's quite nice, it's a little bit dice shaped. There we go, and like so. And then add just a couple of little flecks of that darker color on there. I'm going to go back over this one to make it look a bit darker still. And voila, we have our nice shiny plastic. You can choose to use your fine liner again, just using that edge to make this pop out of the page. You can be quite sketchy with the fine liner, or you can be more precise. Both give different looks, and it also depends on your commitment to what you're doing on the page as to how you want it to look. Again, be careful you don't stick your hand in the wet fine liner and smudge it across the page. We're getting there, nice around the edge. So I don't know if you'll have studied anything of thick and thin lines. The lines where you can see the top edge and then the next edge, those should be thin. And then the ones where you can't see the next side or face afterwards should be thicker. So all your outside ones should be thicker, and then your inside ones should be thinner. Okay, so we have completed wood, plastic, and metal. Well done.